Hi, I'm Josh, and today we're going to talk about the largest synth that I have had on this channel. I checked, it is physically bigger than the Korg Prologue. This, as you can tell, is the Korg MS2000. So the MS2000 is a really special synth to me for a couple of different reasons. Now, the biggest one is that it was used heavily in making the soundtrack to my favorite video game, Metroid Prime. Awesome game. I own Prime 2 in the trilogy, so I clearly was influenced by something there. The MS2000, as the name suggests, came out in the year 2000. It's a 4-voice digital analog modeling synthesizer, which, so it's digital, but it tries to sound and present itself as being analog. This is the keyboard version. There's also a rack mount version, and then later on, I think a couple years later, they released the MS2000B, which is this, except this huge part that's blue was black, and it had an XLR input instead of just the audio ins in the back. We'll explain why in a bit. But I thought that a fun way to start would be to just play through some of the presets. Presets are like a window into a lost culture, and just listen to how it sounds. So without further ado, I mentioned earlier that this is what's called an analog modeling synthesizer. So it tries to kind of approximate analog circuitry, but what's cool to me about something like the MS2000 is that it doesn't quite get it. So it doesn't exactly sound to me like other digital synths, but it also doesn't sound 100% like an analog synth. It's kind of in its own weird, fun limbo space that is interesting to explore. Now that we've heard some of the sounds, I think it might be fun to play around with making our own patch. And before we get into it, I just want to make it clear, I'm not trying to sell you on a Korg MS2000. I know that between this and the Volcas and the Korg Prologue, I've featured a lot of Korg gear on here, but I'm not sponsored by Korg. Though Korg, if you want to send me an SV2, I won't complain. I'm not trying to get you to buy one of these, and if you decide to go out and buy one, there's nothing in it for me. I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's a cool synthesizer. So let's say that we're going through and we find a preset that we are not super wedded to and we would not mind getting rid of. I don't know, search engine. This is outdated, it's been replaced by Google. So what we will do is we'll hit this edit button. And then it's going to bring you through a number of pages. And the page that we want to get to is the 26th page, which says utility init program okay. Now that I think about it, I might have been able to just jump there by hitting that button, but whatever. So I'll hit yes. It'll say, are you sure? I hit yes. Completed. Okay, and now we can go through and start playing around with making our sounds. So there's a few different things we can do. We have our oscillator options up here. So for instance, I could select a wave shape for oscillator 1. This could be anything from, our normal shapes, saw, a square with pulse wave modulation, a triangle, a sine, Vox wave. I don't know what DWGS stands for, I will be honest. Sounds kind of organ-like to me. Noise. There it is. And audio in, which we'll explore later. But anyway, I'm going to stick with, I guess, more normal waveforms. I'll do oscillator 1 will be a square. Oscillator 2 I'm going to make be, I'll keep it as a saw actually. And in the mixer section, I'm going to bring up oscillator 2. And in this mixer section, I could bring up noise. If I wanted to, give it a little crunch. I don't feel like doing that though. There's a few different knobs for the filter. There's the knob for the filter envelope intensity, which down here you can set an envelope for the filter and then how much it affects the filter. There's keyboard tracking, which just changes how much the filter is applied depending on where you're playing on the keys. And then you've got, cutoff and the resonance. That you can play around with as well. Over in the amp section, you've got this level knob and pan. And then we have the arpeggiator. So it has silkscreened onto the case the different types of arpeggiation you can get. I can turn it on, I can hit type, and it'll say up here, up, down, alternative 1, alt 2. I just assume it's for alternative. I don't know any other word that sounds like alt. Random, trigger, and then you're back at up. Why don't we try it on random, and I'll hit latch. So once I hit a note, it'll just stay. And you can hear now it's going to dance around. And something I forgot to mention when we were in the filter section is that you can also change the filter type. So I could have it be a bandpass filter, a high-pass filter, or a 24 dB or 12 dB low-pass filter. And I might be wrong on this memory of mine, but I think the 24 dB is more akin to what you might find on a classic Moog. I don't think the filter on here sounds the same as a classic Moog, but just fun little synth tidbit. And when I hit latch, it just turns off. Now we can come down here to the envelopes. So this is the envelope for the filter that I mentioned before, and here's the envelope for the amplitude. Now, it's just going to work like other amp envelopes on other synthesizers. So if I turn up the attack, sound will fade in, I turn it down, sound will go on normally, just it's happening. I turn up the decay, and I turn the sustain down, and that will affect how quickly the sound drops to the level of the sustain. So here I have a really long decay, but I can make it shorter. You can hear how it drops down in volume. And then after that, release. So release turned all the way down. Note goes off the minute I let go. Turn it up. It rings out for a little bit. On a synth like this, I find that can be a little bit dangerous because you only have 4 voices. So if you're trying to do some moving chords, you'll hear it kind of cutting off the notes. Anyway, over here we have the LFOs, so different sources of modulation. There's sample and hold, and then you have the saw wave, square wave, and triangle, and then the other LFO can be a saw wave, what looks to me like a pulse wave, and a sine wave or sample and hold. And then over here you have an effects section for delay. And I'll turn up the time and the feedback. And there you go, delay. And then over here, so this is the thing about the synth that I thought was the most interesting, is its virtual patch bay. Now, you can see that I have 4 patch settings here. What I can do is I can choose for each one a source and a destination. I could use it to modulate pitch. Not sure why I would, but I could. So those are a lot of the features, like the basic features of the synth. But I did mention the microphone, and I don't know if you can see, but I do have a microphone sitting right here. And I think it's time that I showed you what that was for. Now I'm going to have to turn this microphone on. And you might have noticed the light there flaring to life. Now before I go any further, I should mention that while the Korg MS2000 isn't available on the new market anymore, it was discontinued, it is in a sense still available in that there is a synthesizer that Korg sells that is incredibly popular, that is based on the architecture of the MS2000, and that is Korg's Microkorg. What you get with the MS2000 versus the Microkorg is just way more hands-on controls and a few more extra keys, and the keys are also bigger. What you lose with the MS2000, unfortunately, is the MS2000 is quite a bit more expensive on the used market. I've noticed the prices on these are actually going up recently. The Microkorg kind of iconically has what's called a vocoder. The vocoder is just a little device that you can use that blends the sound of your voice coming through a gooseneck microphone that's included with the Microkorg and the synth tones that the synthesizer would otherwise be generating. And what's cool is, like I mentioned, the Microkorg is based on the MS2000, and the MS2000 does have a vocoder. So to turn it on, it's a little bit involved, but I'll hit edit. I have to go down all the way to setting 01A, and it says common, mode, single, and if I hit yes, you'll see that it starts changing now. It says split, dual, and finally vocoder. So right now, if I hit the keys, you're not really going to hear much of anything. You heard something very, very soft. But now I'm going to talk while I hit the keys. And just so we're clear, this is what the synthesizer is hearing, but what it puts out. This is very cool. If you're a big fan of Daft Punk, I mean, there you go. You can sound like Daft Punk. Ultimately, I think that a synthesizer like this is fun. It's cool. Probably not right for everyone. I mentioned, it's gigantic. It is fairly more expensive than the Microkorg, which, if you're okay with, sacrificing all the physical controls, is going to give you a lot of the same kind of like science fiction-y cool sounds. But at least for me, I had my eye on an MS2000 for a while, and I've only had it for a few days, so definitely not an expert, but it is it's pretty cool. I want to thank you so much for watching, for listening to the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new around here, please consider hitting subscribe to help support the channel, and also to make sure that you're kept up to date next time I upload. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And